The locker room smelled of sweat and chlorine, a stale haze that clung to the tiles like a second skin. I stood frozen, my heart hammering so loud I swore it echoed off the metal lockers. Then he stepped closer, me stepbrother. Ethan, the guy who'd never once looked at me like I was anything but a nuisance, and his voice cracked the silence like a whip. I know. Lucas, he said, his blue eyes burning into mine. I saw you with him. My stomach dropped, a cold weight settling in my gut. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not now. Not with Ethan, the all-American jock who'd been my stepbrother for 3 years and barely acknowledged me outside of family dinners. We were seniors at Roosevelt High, a sprawling suburban school just outside Seattle, where the rain never stopped and secrets were harder to keep than you'd think. I was the quiet one, the artist with paint-stained fingers and a sketchbook full of dreams I didn't dare voice. Ethan was the opposite, captain of the football team, prom king material, the guy every girl wanted and every guy envied, including me, though I'd buried that truth so deep it barely saw daylight. Until now. What are you talking about? I managed, my voice thinner than I wanted. My hands fumbled with the strap of my gym bag. The locker room suddenly too small. Too hot. Don't play dumb. Ethan's jaw tightened, and he took another step, his sneakers squeaking on the damp floor. I saw you with Caleb behind the bleachers. I know what you are. The word would hit like a slap. Not who, but what. Like I was some kind of anomaly, a glitch in the perfect picture of his world. Caleb was my best friend, my only real friend. And yeah, maybe we'd gotten too close that one time. A stolen moment of hands brushing and hearts racing. But it wasn't supposed to be anyone's business, least of all Ethan's. I don't owe you an explanation, I said, turning to grab my jacket. My hands shook, betraying me. I needed to get out, to breathe air that didn't feel like it was suffocating me. But Ethan grabbed my arm, his grip firm but not cruel. Lucas, wait. I'm not, he stopped, his breath uneven, like he was wrestling with something bigger than both of us. I'm not trying to hurt you. Then what do you want? I yanked my arm free, facing him. His face was inches from mine, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something that wasn't anger or judgment. Fear, maybe, or something softer, something I didn't dare name. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But I can't stop thinking about it. About you. The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. My heart stuttered, caught between disbelief and a dangerous spark of hope. Ethan, the guy who'd spent years acting like I was invisible, was looking at me like I was the only thing in the room, and I didn't know whether to run or stay. The rest of that night was a blur. I left the locker room first, my head spinning, Ethan's words looping in my mind like a song I couldn't shake. I walked home through the drizzle, the streetlights casting long shadows on the wet pavement. Our housey, a modest 2-story with peeling paint and a sagging porch, was quiet when I got there. Mom and Ethan's dad, Greg, were out for their weekly date night, leaving the place to us. I didn't expect Ethan to come home right away. He usually hung out with his teammates after practice, laughing and tossing around a football like life was one big game he'd already won. But when I heard the front door slam an hour later, my stomach twisted. I was in my room, sketching absently in my notebook a half-finished portrait of Caleb, his crooked smile taking shape under my pencil. I shoved it under my pillow when Ethan's footsteps thudded up the stairs. He didn't knock, just pushed the door open and stood there, still in his gym clothes, his hair damp from the rain. "We need to talk," he said. "There's nothing to talk about." I kept my eyes on the floor, my heart racing again. "You said what you wanted to say?" "No, I didn't." He crossed the room in 2 strides and sat on the edge of my bed. Too close for comfort. I didn't mean to come at you like that in the locker room. I don't know. Freaked out. I laughed. Bitter. You're not the one who got ambushed. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. His usual confidence gone. But seeing you with Calebit messed with me. Not because of him, but because. He trailed off, his hands clenching into fists. Because I've been noticing you for a while. Lucas. And I don't know what to do with that. I stared at him, my mind blank. This was Ethan. The guy who'd once laughed when his friends called me the weird art kid. The guy who'd never given me a second glance unless it was to ask me to pass the mashed potatoes. And now he was sitting on my bed, telling me he'd been noticing me. You're straight, I said, the words blunt. You've got a girlfriend. You've got a whole life that doesn't include me. Had a girlfriend. He corrected, his voice low. Broke up with Sarah last week. And yeah, I thought I was straight. Until I started looking at you and couldn't stop. The air left my lungs. I wanted to laugh, to call him out for messing with me. But his eyes were too raw, too honest. This wasn't a game. Not to him. And, God help me, not to me either. By the time Mom and Greg got home, Ethan was back in his room, and I was staring at the ceiling, my sketchbook forgotten. The house creaked around me, the rain tapping against the windows like a warning. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? When everything I thought I knew about Ethan about myself was unraveling. The next morning, school was a minefield. Ethan acted like nothing had happened, high-fiving his teammates in the hallway, his laugh loud and easy. But when our eyes met in the cafeteria, something passed between USA Secret. A question. A promise. I didn't know what to do with it. So I buried myself in my art class, letting the charcoal smudge my fingers as I tried to draw the chaos in my head. Caleb noticed something was off. You okay, man? He asked, leaning against my desk, his dark eyes searching mine. He was shorter than Ethan, wiry, with a quick grin that always made me feel safe. Until now. Yeah, I lied, smudging the lines of my drawing. Just tired. He didn't push, but I could tell he didn't buy it. Caleb knew me better than anyone, knew the weight of the secrets I carried. But even he didn't know about Ethan. Not yet. That afternoon, Ethan found me again, this time in the art room after school. The place was empty, the smell of paint and turpentine thick in the air. He didn't say anything at first, just watch me clean my brushes, his hands shoved in his pockets. We can't keep doing this, I said finally, my voice tight, pretending nothing's changed. Then let's not pretend, he said, stepping closer. Let's figure it out. Together. And just like that, the world tilted again. The art room felt smaller with Ethan standing there, his presence like a storm cloud ready to break. I set my paintbrush down, the bristles still wet with crimson, and faced him. His words "let's figure it out together" hung in the air, reckless and impossible, like a match struck too close to gasoline. Figure what out? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. You don't even know what you're saying. Ethan, you're not like me. He flinched. Just barely. But I caught it. Maybe I don't have it all figured out, he said, his voice low, urgent. But I know I feel something. And I know you feel it too. I wanted to deny it, to shove his words back at him and pretend my heart wasn't racing. But I couldn't. Not when his eyes held mine like that. Like he was seeing me for the first time. I turned away, focusing on the half-finished canvas behind me, a chaotic swirl of colors that mirrored the mess in my head. Ethan, you don't get it, I said, gripping the edge of the table. This isn't just some phase you can try on and walk away from. People like me, we don't get to walk away. We live with the consequences. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over my canvas. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been up all night wondering what the hell this means? His voice cracked, and I turned to face him, startled by the raw edge in it. I'm scared, Lucas, but I'm here. I didn't know what to say. Ethan. Scared. The guy who could throw a perfect spiral and charm a room full of people without breaking a sweat. It didn't add up. But the way his hands trembled as he shoved them deeper into his pockets told me he wasn't lying. The bell rang, a distant clang that signaled the end of after-school clubs. The art room was ours for now, but the world outside was waiting classmates. Teachers. Rumors that could spread faster than wildfire. I thought of Caleb, of the way he'd looked at me earlier, like he knew something was wrong. I thought of Mom and Greg, oblivious to the storm brewing under their roof. And I thought of Ethan, standing here, offering me something I wasn't sure I could take. What do you want from me? I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, he admitted, his eyes searching mine. But I want to find out. Don't you? That night, I avoided Ethan. Dinner was torture mom chattering about her book club, Greg bragging about Ethan's latest game, Ethan himself sitting across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table. I kept my eyes on my plate, pushing mashed potatoes around like they held the answers to the universe. After dinner, I escaped to the garage, where I'd set up a makeshift studio. It was just a corner with an easel and a tarp, but it was mine. I blasted music through my earbuds, letting the bass drown out my thoughts as I worked on a new Paintinga City skyline at dusk, all sharp lines and fading light. I didn't hear Ethan come in until he tapped my shoulder. I yanked out an earbud, my heart lurching. Jesus, you scared me. Sorry. He didn't look sorry. He looked nervous. He was still in his jeans and hoodie, his hair mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. Can we talk? We talked, I said, dipping my brush in black paint. Didn't get us anywhere. He didn't take the hint. Instead, he sat on an old stool, his elbows on his knees, watching me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. I meant what I said earlier. I'm not messing with you, Lucas. I need you to tell me what this is. I laughed, short and bitter. You're asking me. You're the one who dropped a bomb in the locker room and walked away like it was nothing. I didn't walk away. He shot back. I'm here, aren't I? I set my brush down, my hand shaking. Yeah, you're here. But for how long? Until you decide this is too hard. Until your friends start talking. You don't know what it's like. Ethan, you don't know what it means to be out. To have people look at you like you're less. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. Then tell me. Help me understand. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him to leave me alone. But the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down, I didn't want him to go. I wanted him to stay. To keep looking at me like I mattered. And that scared me more than anything. The next few days were a tightrope. Ethan and I circled each other at home, at school, like we were both afraid to get too close. But every glance, every accidental touch, felt like a spark. Caleb noticed. Of course. He cornered me in the library on Wednesday, his arms crossed, his usual grin replaced by a frown. You've been weird all week, he said, dropping into the chair across from me. What's going on? Nothing. I lied, flipping through a random book. Just stressed about finals. Bullshit. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. This is about Ethan, isn't it? I saw him staring at you in the cafeteria. What's his deal? I froze. Caleb didn't know about the locker room, about Ethan's confession. But he wasn't stupid. He'd seen the way Ethan's eyes lingered, the way I flinched every time our shoulders brushed in the hallway. He's just being Ethan, I said, my voice flat. Overprotective stepbrother crap. Caleb didn't buy it, but he let it go, his eyes narrowing like he was filing it away for later. I hated lying to him, but what was I supposed to say? That my straight stepbrother was suddenly questioning everything he'd ever known because of me. That I was questioning myself just as much. That night, Ethan knocked on my door again. This time, I let him in. We didn't talk much, just sat on my bed, watching some dumb action movie on my laptop. But when his hand brushed mine, he didn't pull away. Neither did I. By the time the credits rolled, we were closer, our shoulders touching, the silence between us louder than the movie. "Lucas," he said softly, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to do this, but I want to try." I turned to him, my heart in my throat. "Then we try," I said, and for the first time, I let myself believe it might be possible. The moment I said, "Then we try," the air in my room shifted, like we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Ethan's eyes held mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might lean in, might close the gap between us. But then he stood abruptly, muttering something about homework, and left me staring at the empty doorway, my pulse pounding in my ears. The next week was a blur of stolen glances and unspoken questions. Ethan didn't avoid me, but he didn't push either. It was like we were both testing the water, afraid to dive in. At school, he was still the golden boy, laughing with his teammates, charming the teachers. But I caught him watching May across the cafeteria, in the hallway, during art class when he'd linger by the door, pretending to talk to someone else. Each look was a spark, and I hated how much I craved them. Caleb wasn't helping. He kept pressing, his questions sharper each day. "What's with you and Ethan?" he asked one afternoon, catching me by my locker. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious, searching. "Nothing," I said, shoving books into my bag. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Because he's been acting weird too. And you're not exactly subtle. Lucas." I slammed my locker shut, harder than I meant to. "Drop it, Caleb." "Okay." He held up his hands, backing off, but the hurt in his eyes stayed with me. Caleb had been my anchor for years, the one person who knew I was gay before I'd even said it out loud. Lying to him felt like betraying myself, but telling the truth about Ethan felt like betraying something else, something fragile, something I wasn't ready to name. That Friday, Ethan suggested we ditch our usual routines and drive to the coast. "Just us," he said, leaning against my bedroom doorframe, his voice casual, but his eyes anything but. "No parents. No school. Just a break." I hesitated. A road trip with Ethan sounded like a dream, and a disaster rolled into one. But the thought of being alone with him, away from the noise of our lives, was too tempting to resist. "Fine," I said, "but you're driving." He grinned. That easy, heart-stopping grin that made my chest ache. "Deal." We left early Saturday morning, the sky still dark, the air crisp with the promise of rain. Ethan's beat-up Jeep smelled like leather and coffee, and we drove in silence at first, the radio humming softly between us. The road stretched out toward the Pacific, winding through pine forests and past sleepy coastal towns. I sketched in my notebook quick, rough lines of the scenery, of Ethan's profile as he drove, his jaw set, his hands steady on the wheel. "You're good at that," he said suddenly, glancing at my sketch. "Always have been." I shrugged. heat creeping up my neck. It's just a hobby. It's more than that. His voice was quiet, sincere. You see things, Lucas, things other people miss. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. Instead, I watched the road, the way the trees blurred into a green haze, the way Ethan's fingers tapped the steering wheel like he was nervous. When we reached the beach, the sky was gray, the waves crashing hard against the shore. We parked and walked down to the sand, our sneakers sinking into the damp grit. Ethan kicked off his shoes and ran toward the water, laughing like a kid. "Come on," he called, turning to face me, his hair whipped by the wind. I followed, slower, my heart thudding as I watched him, this boy who was supposed to be my stepbrother, my opposite, my unattainable. We spent the day there, wandering the shore, skipping rocks, talking about nothing and everything. He told me about the pressure of being the star quarterback, the weight of everyone's expectations. I told him about my art, about the scholarship I was applying for, about the fear of leaving everything behind. For once, we weren't stepbrothers or rivals or strangers. We were just Lucas and Ethan, two people trying to figure out what they meant to each other. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on a driftwood log, our shoulders brushing. The cold seeped through my jacket, but I didn't care. Ethan's warmth was enough. "I've never done this before," he said, staring at the waves. "Felt like this. Not with anyone." "Me neither," I admitted, my voice barely carrying over the wind. He turned to me, his face half lit by the fading light. "What happens next?" I didn't have an answer, but I reached for his hand, my fingers curling around his. He didn't pull away. For the first time, I let myself hope that whatever this was, it was real. Back home, reality hit hard. Monday morning, I overheard Ethan's teammates in the hallway, their voices loud and careless. "What's with your stepbrother, man?" one of them asked, laughing. "He's always staring at you like a lost puppy." Ethan's laugh was forced, brittle. "He's just weird. You know, artsy type." The words stung, sharper than I expected. I turned away before he could see me, my chest tight. I knew he was protecting himself, playing the role he'd always played. But it hurt all the same. That night, I confronted him in his room. "What was that today?" I demanded, my voice low to keep Mom and Greg from hearing. "You gonna pretend I don't exist when your friends are around?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "It's not that simple, Lucas. They wouldn't get it." "And you think I do?" I shot back. "You think it's easy for me to trust you after that?" "I'm trying," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm trying to figure this out. Same as you." "Then stop hiding," I said, stepping closer. "If you mean what you say, prove it." He didn't answer, but his eyes held mine, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he stepped back, his hands clenched. "I need time," he said. "Please." I left his room, my heart a tangled mess of hope and hurt. I didn't know if I could wait, but I knew I didn't want to let him go. Ethan's plea for time echoed in my head for days, a constant reminder of the fragile thing we were building. I wanted to believe him, to trust the way he'd held my hand on that windswept beach. But doubt gnawed at me. Every time he laughed with his teammates or avoided my eyes in the hallway, it felt like a step backward, like he was slipping away before we'd even begun. By Wednesday, I couldn't take it anymore. I found him after practice, alone in the locker room again, lacing up his sneakers. The air was thick with the same stale sweat and chlorine. But this time, I wasn't backing down. "You said you needed time," I started, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. But I need to know where you stand. Ethan. Because I can't keep doing this halfway. He looked up, his face flushed from practice, his eyes guarded. I'm not bailing. Lucas. I don't know how to do this without screwing everything up. Then talk to me, I said, stepping closer. Tell me what you're afraid of. He stood, his height making the space feel smaller. Everything, he admitted, his voice raw. My friends, my dad, the team. If they find out I'm whatever I am, it's over. Everything I've worked for. I wanted to be angry, to tell him he was being selfish. But I saw the fear in his eyes real. Bone-deep fear. I knew that fear. I'd lived it every day since I realized I was gay. Since the first time I heard a slur tossed carelessly in the hallway. But I'd had years to grapple with it. Ethan was just starting. Then we take it slow, I said. Softer now. But you can't keep acting like I'm invisible. Not if this means something. He nodded, his shoulders slumping. It means something, he said, so quietly I almost missed it. You mean something. My heart lurched, and before I could think better of it, I reached out, my hand brushing his. He didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped closer, his breath warm against my cheek. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me, but the sound of the locker room door swinging open made us both jump. It was Caleb. His eyes flicked between us, narrowing. Am I interrupting something? No, Ethan said quickly, stepping back. Too quickly. I felt the sting of it, but I forced a smile. Just talking. What's up? Caleb didn't buy it. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way he crossed his arms. Just checking on you, he said. His voice clipped. You've been off lately. I'm fine. I lied, my stomach twisting. Caleb didn't say anything else. But as he left, his glance back at Ethan was sharp enough to cut. That night, Ethan came to my room again. No knocking, just him slipping inside, his face shadowed. I'm sorry about earlier, he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. I panicked. I noticed, I said, keeping my eyes on my sketchbook. I was drawing the beach now, the waves from our trip, but the lines felt wrong, unsteady. I don't want to mess this up, he said, his voice low. But I don't know how to be this. Not yet. Then let me help you, I said, setting my pencil down. But you have to let me in, Ethan. No more shutting me out. He nodded, his hand finding mine. His touch was tentative, like he was afraid I'd break. Or maybe he was afraid he would. We sat there in silence, the weight of our hands enough for now. The next day, things got complicated. Caleb cornered me in the art room, his usual easy grin gone. You're hiding something, he said, his voice low. And I'm pretty sure it's about Ethan. I froze, my paintbrush hovering over the canvas. Caleb, it's not. Don't lie to me. He cut in, his eyes flashing. I've known you forever. Lucas, I know when you're not telling me something. And I saw the way he looked at you in the locker room. My heart sank. Caleb wasn't just my best friend, was the first person I'd ever had feelings for, even if I'd never acted on them. The thought of hurting him made my chest ache. But I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. It's complicated, I said finally, hating how weak it sounded. Complicated, he repeated, his voice bitter. Right. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. He walked out, leaving me with my half-finished painting and a gnawing sense of guilt. I didn't know how to fix this, how to keep Ethan and Caleb and myself from falling apart. That afternoon, Ethan found me in the library, his face pale. Coach heard something, he said, his voice tight. One of the guys saw us in the locker room yesterday. He's asking questions. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About you. About me. About us. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes wild. If this gets out, Lucas, I'm done. The team, the scholarship, everything. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, that we could handle it. But the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. We were in too deep, and the world was closing in. By Friday, the rumors were spreading. Whispers in the hallways. Sidelong glances from Ethan's teammates. I saw the way they looked at him, like he was someone they didn't recognize anymore. And I saw the way he pulled back, putting distance between us at school. His texts short and cautious. But that night, he showed up at my door again, his eyes red-rimmed. I can't do this alone, he said, his voice breaking. I need you, Lucas. And despite everything, the rumors, the fear, the uncertainty, I let him in. Ethan's voice, raw and broken, hung in the air as he stood in my doorway. I need you, Lucas. The words were a lifeline, pulling me toward him even as fear clawed at my chest. I stepped aside, letting him in, and we sat on my bed, the silence between us heavy with everything we weren't saying. I didn't think it would be like this, he said finally, his hands clasped tightly together. I thought I could handle us. But now everyone's talking. And he trailed off, his eyes fixed on the floor. I'm scared I'm gonna lose everything. I wanted to tell him he wouldn't, that we could face this together. But the words felt hollow. The rumors at school were growing louder, sharper, like knives waiting to cut. I'd heard them, 2 snippets in the cafeteria, laughs in the locker room. Ethan's stepbrothers got a thing for him, someone had said, their voice dripping with mockery. I'd walked away, my face burning, but the words followed me. You don't have to do this alone, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my head. But you have to decide what you want, Ethan, because I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out. He looked at me then, his eyes searching mine. I want you, he said, so softly I almost didn't hear it. I just don't know how to make it work. Before I could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine. It was tentative, hesitant, like he was testing the waters. My heart stopped, then raced, and I kissed him back, my hands finding his shoulders. For a moment, the world disappeared, the rumors, the fear, the weight of who we were supposed to be. It was just us, messy and real. But then he pulled back, his breath uneven. I'm sorry, he whispered. I shouldn't have. Don't. I cut him off, my voice sharp. Don't apologize for that. He nodded, but the fear was back in his eyes, and I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. The next morning, school was a battlefield. The rumors had spread like wildfire, and by lunch, Ethan's teammates were openly taunting him. I saw it from across the cafeteria, one of them, a linebacker named Jake, shoving Ethan's shoulder, laughing too loud. What's the deal, man? You and your stepbrother got a little secret. Ethan's face went red, but he didn't fight back. He just grabbed his tray and walked away, his shoulders hunched. I wanted to go to him, to tell him to stand up to them. But Caleb was at my table, watching me like a hawk. You gonna tell me what's going on? He asked, his voice low. Because I'm not stupid. Lucas, I see the way you look at him. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. It's not what you think, I said, but the lie tasted bitter. Caleb deserved better, but I didn't know how to tell him the truth without breaking everything. He shook his head, his eyes dark with hurt. You're choosing him over me, aren't you? Caleb, it's not like that. I started. But he was already standing, his chair scraping against the floor. Save it, he said, and walked away. I felt like I was drowning, caught between Ethan and Caleb, between who I was and who I wanted to be. I didn't see Ethan for the rest of the day. But that night, he texted me, meet me at the park. Midnight. The park was quiet, the swings swaying gently in the breeze. Ethan was already there, sitting on a bench, his hoodie pulled up. He looked smaller somehow, less like the untouchable quarterback and more like a kid carrying too much weight. I told Jake to back off, he said as I sat beside him. He didn't take it well. What happened? I asked, my stomach twisting. He said some stuff. About you. About us. His voice was tight. Angry. I punched him. I stared at him, shocked. You what? He wouldn't shut up. Ethan said, his hands clenching. I couldn't let him talk about you like that. I didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. Ethan fighting for me was everything I'd wanted. But it came at a cost. What now? I asked. The team's gonna eat you alive. I don't care, he said, but his voice shook. I'm done pretending. Lucas, I'm done hiding. I reached for his hand, my fingers threading through his. Then we face it together, I said, echoing his words from the art room. No more running. He squeezed my hand, his eyes meeting mine in the moonlight. No more running, he agreed. The next day, school was worse. Jake had a black eye, and the rumors were no longer whispers, they were shouts. Ethan walked through the halls with his head high, but I could see the strain in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched when people stared. I kept my distance, not because I wanted to, but because I knew he needed space to navigate this. Caleb, though, wasn't giving me space. He found me in the art room again, his expression unreadable. You're with him, aren't you? He asked, his voice flat. I didn't lie this time. Yeah, I said, my heart heavy. I'm sorry, Caleb. He nodded, his eyes distant. I should have seen it coming. I thought maybe you and I. He didn't finish. But he didn't have to. I felt the weight of what I'd lost, what I'd chosen. I never wanted to hurt you, I said, my voice breaking. I know, he said, and walked away. That night, Ethan and I sat in the garage, my paintings surrounding us like a shield. It's gonna get worse before it gets better, he said, his voice quiet. I know, I said, leaning against him, but we'll get through it. And for the first time, I believed we might. The garage was our sanctuary now, the one place where the world's judgment couldn't reach us. Ethan sat beside me, his shoulder pressed against mine, the canvas in front of us glowing with the half-finished cityscape I'd been working on. His presence was steady, grounding, but I could feel the tension in him, the weight of what we were facing. The rumors at school had become a storm, and we were caught in the eye, waiting for the next gust to hit. I talked to Coach today, Ethan said, his voice low, like he was afraid to break the quiet. He's benching me for the next game. Says I'm a distraction. My stomach sank. Football was Ethan's life, his ticket to college, his identity. Because of Jake. Because of the fight. He shook his head, his jaw tight. Because of us. Someone told him about the park. About you and me. I froze, my paintbrush slipping from my fingers. The park was supposed to be ours. A secret carved out in the dark. But secrets don't stay secret in a place like Roosevelt High. Who? I asked, though I already suspected. Doesn't matter, Ethan said, his eyes fixed on the canvas. It's out now? Everyone knows. I wanted to scream, to tear the world apart for doing this to him, to us. But all I could do was take his hand, my fingers tightening around his. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thick. This is my fault. No, he said fiercely, turning to face me. Don't do that. Lucas, this isn't on you. I chose this. I chose you. His words hit me like a wave, warm and overwhelming. I wanted to believe them, to hold on to the certainty in his voice. But fear was a stubborn thing. What about your scholarship? I asked. Your future? He shrugged, a small, sad smile tugging at his lips. I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The next day, school was unbearable. The stares were sharper now, the whispers louder. Ethan walked with me to art class, his hand brushing mine in the hallway, a small act of defiance that sent my heart racing. But when we passed Jake and his crew, their laughter cut through the air like glass. Careful, Ethan, Jake called, his voice dripping with venom. Don't want your stepbrother getting too clingy. Ethan tensed, but I grabbed his arm before he could do anything stupid. Don't, I whispered. He's not worth it. He nodded, but his eyes were dark, stormy. I knew he was fighting every instinct to protect me, to protect us, and I loved him for it, even if I couldn't say it yet. In art class, I poured my frustration into my work, the cityscape taking on jagged edges and stormy colors. My teacher, Ms. Harper, noticed. This is powerful. Lucas, she said, peering over my shoulder. Raw. What's inspiring it? I didn't answer. How could I explain that my world was unraveling? That the boy I was falling for was both my strength and my vulnerability? Instead, I just nodded and kept painting, letting the canvas hold what I couldn't say. After school, Ethan was waiting for me outside. Let's get out of here, he said, his voice tight. I can't deal with this place right now. We drove to the edge of town, to a quiet overlook where the city sprawled below us, all lights and shadows. We sat on the hood of his Jeep, the night air cool against our skin. For a while, we didn't talk, just watched the world below, the distance making it feel less real. I told my dad, Ethan said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. About us. My heart stopped. What? Not everything, he clarified, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Just that I'm figuring some stuff out. About who I am, who I want to be with. I stared at him, my mind racing. Greg was a good guy, but he was old school, the kind of man who thought feelings were best kept quiet. What did he say? Ethan laughed, a short, bitter sound. He didn't say much, just looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Said we'd talk later. I reached for his hand, my thumb brushing over his knuckles. That's something, right? He didn't kick you out. Yeah, he said, but his voice was hollow. But he doesn't get it. Not yet. We sat there until the stars came out, our hands still linked, the city lights blurring below. I didn't know what would happen with Greg, with school, with the team. But in that moment, with Ethan beside me, I felt like we could face anything. The next morning, reality came crashing back. Mom cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes worried. Lucas, what's going on with you and Ethan? She asked, her voice gentle but firm. Greg mentioned something, and you've both been acting strange. I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips. It's nothing, I said, but my voice cracked, betraying me. It's not nothing, she said, sitting across from me. You're my son. I know when something's wrong. I wanted to tell her, to spill everything. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head. I'm fine, Mom. Really? She didn't push, but her eyes stayed on me, like she was waiting for me to crack. I escaped to my room, my heart pounding. Ethan was already there, sitting on my bed, his face pale. They know, he said, his voice barely audible. Mom and Dad. They heard the rumors. I sat beside him, my stomach churning. What do we do? He looked at me, his eyes fierce. We tell them the truth. Together. And just like that, the line we'd been tiptoeing around was gone. It was time to stop hiding. The kitchen table felt like a courtroom. Mom and Greg sat across from us, their faces a mix of worry and confusion. Ethan's hand was under the table, gripping mine so tightly I could feel his pulse racing. I didn't know if we were about to confess or defend ourselves, but there was no turning back now. Lucas. Ethan. Mom started, her voice careful, like she was stepping through a minefield. We've heard things. At school. In town. We need to know what's going on. Greg's eyes were on Ethan, steady but unreadable. Son, you said you're figuring things out. What does that mean? Ethan took a deep breath, his grip on my hand tightening. It means I'm not who I thought I was, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor I felt in his fingers. It means I care about Lucas, not just as a stepbrother. The room went silent, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Mom's eyes widened, flicking between us, while Greg leaned back, his face a mask. I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, but Ethan's hand kept me anchored. Care how? Greg asked, his voice low, almost dangerous. I love him, Ethan said, and the words hit me like a shockwave. He hadn't said it to me first, hadn't warned me, but there it was, raw and real, laid bare for everyone to see. Mom gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Greg just stared, his jaw tight. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the weight of Ethan's confession. I love him. 3 words that changed everything. Lucas, Mom said, her voice trembling. Is this true? Are you together? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We are. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. Then Greg stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I need some air, he said, and walked out, the back door slamming behind him. Mom reached for my hand, her eyes wet. I don't understand, she said, but I want to. I need time. Ethan and I sat there, still holding hands, as Mom followed Greg outside. The house felt too big, too empty, like it was holding its breath. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I didn't mean to blindside you. You didn't, I said, turning to him. You said what I've been too scared to say. He smiled, small and shaky, and for the first time, I felt like we were in this together, no matter what came next. School was a different kind of hell after that. The rumors had solidified into truth, and the stares were relentless. Ethan's teammates avoided him, their silence louder than any taunt. Jake didn't bother hiding his smirk. His black eye faded, but his resentment burning bright. I kept my head down, focusing on my art. But even the art room felt tainted now, like the world had invaded my safe space. Caleb was the worst part. He hadn't spoken to me since our fight, and I missed him like a limb. I found him at lunch, sitting alone under the bleachers, his sketchbook open but untouched. Can we talk? I asked, sitting beside him. He didn't look at me. What's there to talk about? You made your choice. I didn't choose Ethan over you. I said, my voice cracking. I love him. Caleb. I didn't plan it. It just happened. He finally looked at me, his eyes raw with hurt. And what about me? What about us? I didn't have an answer. Caleb had been my first crush, my best friend, my safe place. But Ethan was something else, something I couldn't explain. I'm sorry, I said, hating how useless it sounded. I never wanted to lose you. He nodded, his jaw tight. You haven't lost me, he said finally. But I need time. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. I held on to it, hoping it was enough to rebuild what we'd had. That night, Ethan and I went back to the overlook, the city lights sprawling below us like a promise. We didn't talk about school or our parents or the future. We just sat, our hands linked, the silence saying more than words ever could. I meant it, Ethan said suddenly, his voice soft. What I said to them. I love you, Lucas. My heart stuttered, and I turned to him, my eyes burning. I love you too, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. He kissed me then, slow and sure, like he was claiming something he'd been afraid to touch. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, the world fading away until it was just us. Just this. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath warm against my lips. We're gonna be okay, he said, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Yeah, I said, and for the first time, I believed it. The next week, things started to shift. Mom and Greg were still processing, but they were trying awkward questions at dinner, tentative offers of support. At school, some of Ethan's teammates started talking to him again, small gestures that felt like olive branches. The rumors didn't stop, but they lost some of their venom, like the world was getting used to us. Caleb started sitting with me at lunch again, his smiles cautious but real. It wasn't the same, but it was a start. And Ethan was different. He walked taller, his hand brushing mine in the hallway, his eyes meeting mine without fear. We weren't out of the woods, but we were moving forward, step by step, together. The weeks that followed felt like a slow exhale. The storm of rumors at school didn't vanish, but it quieted, like a fire burning down to embers. Ethan and I found a rhythm, a fragile balance between who we were to the world and who we were to each other. We stole moments in the garage, in the art room, at the overlooked places where we could be us without the weight of everyone else's eyes. Mom and Greg were still adjusting. Dinner conversations were stilted, their questions careful but earnest. Are you happy? Mom asked me one night, her eyes searching mine over a plate of lasagna. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Greg didn't say much, but he'd started looking at Ethan with something softer than confusion, something closer to acceptance. It was enough for now. At school, Ethan was slowly rebuilding his place on the team. Coach let him back on the field, though not without a lecture about focus. Some of his teammates, the ones who mattered, stood by him. Others, like Jake, kept their distance, their silence a cold reminder of what Ethan had risked. But he didn't flinch anymore, didn't pull away when our hands brushed in the hallway. That alone felt like a victory. Caleb was harder. We were talking again, but there was a distance between us, a crack that hadn't fully healed. One afternoon, he found me in the art room. My cityscape finally finished bold. Stormy. Alive. It's good, he said, nodding at the canvas. You put everything into it, didn't you? I smiled, a little sad. Yeah. You know me. He sat beside me, his sketchbook closed. I'm trying. Lucas, he said, his voice low. It's hard, seeing you with him. But I want you to be happy. I am, I said, and I reached for his hand, squeezing it lightly. And I want you to be happy too. He nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. We'll get there, he said, and I believed him. Spring came, and with it, graduation loomed. Ethan got a partial scholarship to a state college. Not the full ride he'd hoped for, but enough to keep him playing. I got into an art program in Seattle, close enough that we wouldn't be torn apart. The future was still uncertain, but it didn't scare me anymore. Not with Ethan by my side. The night before prom, we sat in the garage, my head on his shoulder, the cityscape drying on the easel. You going? He asked, his voice teasing. Prom king's supposed to make an appearance. I laughed, shoving him lightly. Only if you're my date. He grinned, his eyes warm. Deal. Prom was surreal. We didn't go as a couple, not officially, but we didn't hide either. Ethan wore a navy suit, his hair tamed for once, and I wore a black jacket that felt like armor. We danced. Not together, but close enough that our eyes kept finding each other across the room. Caleb was there too, with a girl from his math class, his smile brighter than it had been in weeks. When he caught my eye, he raised his glass. A silent toast. I raised mine back. After prom, Ethan and I drove to the overlook. The city lights brighter now, like they were celebrating with us. We sat on the hood of his Jeep, the night warm and soft around us. I was scared, Ethan said, his voice quiet. That night in the locker room, when I first saw you differently, I thought I was losing myself. And now? I asked, my heart pounding. Now I know I was finding myself, he said, turning to me. Finding you. He kissed me then, slow and deep, and I felt the world settle into place. We weren't perfect, and the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more stairs, more whispers, more battles to fight. But we had each other, and that was enough. The morning of graduation, I woke to find Ethan in my room, holding a small canvas. It was a painting rough, unpolished, but unmistakably his. A sketch of us on the beach, our hands linked, the waves crashing behind us. You painted this? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. Tried to, he said, sheepish. You're the artist. I just wanted to give you something. I pulled him into a hug, my face buried in his shoulder. It's perfect, I said, and I meant it. We walked across the stage that day, diplomas in hand, the future wide open. Mom and Greg were in the crowd, clapping louder than anyone. Caleb was there too, his grin wide and real. The world wasn't fixed, wasn't kind, but it was ours, and we were ready to face it. As we tossed our caps into the air, Ethan's hand found mine, his fingers threading through mine. Ready for what's next? He asked, his eyes bright. With you, I said, smiling. Always. And in that moment, under the bright June sun, I knew we'd changed everything, not just for us, but for everyone who'd doubted us, everyone who tried to tear us down. We'd built something stronger, something true, and no one could take that away.